The PS5 Beta 4 has been released with support for, among other things, 3D audio for more than just headphone users. We're talking Dolby Atmos Gaming if you have a system that supports it, and I do. So let's put it to the test and see just how good it actually is. Stick around.
Perfect.
Hey guys, it's the Villaman here, home theater enthusiast and lover of all things tech, and I'm also an avid gamer. There's a lot of buzz right now about the PS5 finally supporting Dolby Atmos, so I wanted to put it to the test using my equipment you see here behind me. We'll test just how good the Dolby Atmos is in games, and I'll use the Dolby Atmos viewer of my train of altitude to actually show you what the speakers are doing as we play the game. But before that, let's get everyone up to speed by making sure we all know what Dolby Atmos is. In a spatial audio format like Dolby Atmos, sounds are represented as objects, and metadata included in the audio signal determines how these objects are supposed to move throughout your room, and your speakers determine how they end up sounding to you, the listener. Before we get into too much detail though, let's begin by explaining a bit of the fundamentals. Now, Atmos soundtracks, whether for a movie or game, are based on a specific type of bed layer. Those are the speakers around you at ear level, either 5 or 7 channels in a 5.1 or 7.1 channel layout respectively, the 0.1 being the subwoofer. Think of that as the foundation that the Atmos layer of effects are built on. There are 3 speakers up front and 2 in the rear for 5.1 channels, while the 7.1 channel adds 2 speakers to the side of you. Kind of like how my setup is. You can check out my tour video that I did in here if you haven't seen it yet. Okay, so moving on. When it comes to the type of Dolby Atmos mixes, there are 2, static and dynamic mixes. With a static mix, think of it as being similar to how surround sound mixing has always been, where audio is channel specific and the people who design the sound, the mixer, intends for a specific sound to be coming from a specific speaker or channel. Like I mentioned earlier, imagine a suspense movie with a creaky door opening, and in that scenario, the mixer places the sound in the rear surround speaker so it comes from behind you. While for a dynamic mix, instead of specifying which speaker the sound should be coming from, the mixer would place the object making the sound, in this case the door that's opening, in a specific position, in this case behind the listener. And the speaker or speakers that are in that location would play to place the sound exactly where it needs to be, even if that means that it has to combine the output from multiple speakers to place the object where no speakers actually are. Imagine the rear and side surround speakers as well as the rear in-ceiling speakers above you combining their output to place the sound between all 3 of them, 3 feet above your head where there's actually no speakers. That's the power of spatial or 3D audio, and that's what it can do. Say you happen to have more speakers than a 7.1.4 configuration, where the first number represents the bed layer speakers at ear level, the second number represents the number of subwoofers, and the third number represents the number of in-ceiling speakers. So say you have a 9.1.6 or something like that configuration and the mix is static, then you'll have some speakers that just won't be used. But if the mix is dynamic, as those objects move throughout your room, those additional speakers you have will be used properly to recreate those objects as they move throughout your room. Picture a car speeding by or leaves blowing in the wind. They could go from your rear speakers to the sides to your front stage and even overhead, all dynamically. With Dolby Atmos, sound can be more precise and more in line with what you're seeing on screen, where sound may be coming from areas in your room where you don't even have speakers because your processor combines the output of multiple speakers. At least that's how it is for movies, where you have only one perspective, the viewer, directly in front of the screen. For games though, it's different since the whole environment can shift as the character moves, and this is where the GPU of the PS5 comes in. That's what does the audio processing, and I can't claim to be an expert on how Dolby Atmos mixing is done in games with dynamic environments, but from what my AV processor showed, there aren't dynamic objects in the mix like we see in movies. I'll use this clip of Top Gun Maverick to show you what we would see in a movie with dynamic objects, where the green boxes represent the speakers throughout my room and the yellow circles are the actual dynamic objects as they are moving. For games, what I'm guessing happens is the PS5 creates the audio output with most likely a 7.1 base layer as well as 4 overhead channels to complete the Atmos mix, so a 7.1.4 mix. That mix then can be rotated based on the orientation of the player in-game. So it's dynamic as far as orientation is concerned, but not in the traditional sense like we talked about before with movies that have dynamic objects moving throughout your space. So now that we know all that, let's see what's actually happening. And to do this, I'll be using my Trinuv Altitude 16 AV processor. The Trinuv allows me to have a real-time 3D view of my room and the speakers to see what the speakers are actually doing using its built-in Dolby Atmos object viewer. You can even see the dynamic Atmos objects represented as yellow balls as they move around your room, and the speakers represented in green. If you want to learn more about the Trinuv, then you can check out the video linked up there. You access the object viewer using a web browser logged into the Trinuv, so let's fire up a game and check it out. So this is called the Atmos Viewer, and it's available if you have a Trinuv. So it's a web interface which gives you a real-time representation of your room and what your speaker is doing. This is called the Atmos Object Viewer. So you see how my room is represented with the 4 overhead Atmos speakers, the left, center, and right speakers up front, the surround sides, the surround rears back here, and my 2 subwoofers. And as they light up, that's when they are actually producing sound. So right now we have the PlayStation home screen that's just playing ambient music. So it's lighting up in the fronts, in the sub a little bit, and the side surrounds, as well as a little bit in the surround rear. So using this tool, we'll see just how much activity there is on the overhead speakers for Dolby Atmos. And you can tell it's real time because as I go like this and change the screens, you see how it changes. Subs are up a lot because of the bass in this track. So let's go digging. Let's start with God of War because this is a relatively new game and the intro has a lot of activity. We'll see how well it's represented in Dolby Atmos, if it comes across as a good Dolby Atmos experience. So far only the bed layer speakers are active in the intro, so let's start a new game actually. It's kind of hard trying to look at the monitor while watching or trying to play this. But I do hear some activity on the overheads now and then.
He keeps eating. I'm not giving up on him.
Yes. It is high. The state is not far. Get ready.
It's a good chance for some overhead activity, but I don't hear anything.
never does. Stay alert.
Oh yeah, I can hear it now. I was smashing X instead. Oh, that's funny. Oh yeah, you can definitely hear all the overhead activity with the trees falling.
Losing my grip here!
Hold tight. Protection stave is near.
Oh no! Wait, we're not your enemy!
Fire wide.
Please don't make me do this! We're through the stage. We made it.
Let us go home.
That's some good surround sound right there. Could be better with some more activity up front, or up top I mean, because there was a lot of like tree falling, and when she was flying,
Take the shot.
I did
it's
not
a
wish you to.
very good or very missed opportunity because
Save your life.
I didn't hear as much activity over the top
There is no letting
when she
that
was in
go.
bird form.
Yeah.
Alright, let's see actual gameplay now.
And we're not alone.
Hear that effect, not just ahead, overhead, but behind
Explains
too.
our trespassers. What happened here?
It's good. So even the title screen of Ghost of Tsushima has some pretty good atmospheric effects. So from the thunder and the wind, you can see some of the Atmos speakers lighting up. The rear one, especially the rear right. The bird just flying over. It's a nice effect. And this is such an atmospheric game with the trees and everything, so you can actually hear some of the rustling overhead. Sounds very well done so far. Still, most of the sound is coming from the side surrounds and the rear surrounds, but there's definitely some overhead sounds as well. You can tell that Atmos performance is very game specific. Come on. I was going.
I'm right here.
I still think we can win.
Let the Kitsune guide you!
Caught beneath the wheel of progress.
Alright, so that's it. Now, what are my actual thoughts on the implementation of Dolby Atmos on the PS5? Well, I think it's a mixed bag because now that we have the Dolby Atmos soundtrack being generated by the PS5 and not being upmixed by your AV processor, then exactly what the creators intended us to hear, then that's what we'll be hearing. So all the overhead effects and, you know, the dynamics of the actual sound coming from the game. Now that's good and bad because it depends on how immersive the creators or how much effort the creators put into the audio of the game, because in God of War there were distinct objects flying overhead, like when the trees were falling in that opening cinematic, or when the lady, I forgot her name, was in bird form. Then that was a good opportunity to create some overhead effects, but there weren't as many as I would have hoped to have heard. So there definitely is going to be that situation where as much overhead effects that we want to hear will not be created by the PS5 because they just didn't mix those effects into the soundtrack of the game. While other games like Overwatch 2, for example, they had a lot of activity in all the speakers. So even when I was playing, there was an ult, I think it was a Junkrat ult, and the bomb that was coming towards me, the tire, I could actually hear where the character was ulting from just by the surround sound effects. So that is an awesome practical use of it, and I think is a good representation of how well it can be implemented. So the PS5 has about 25 games that support Dolby Atmos at the time of making this video, but the system also upmixes legacy games or games in stereo, for example, that it mixes those to Dolby Atmos. So we'll see just how effective, I guess, the system is at doing that. I can't say for sure right now, but I'm sure a lot of you will be testing that for yourself. So let me know in the comments if you have done any of that testing and what you think of Dolby Atmos on the PS5. And share your overall thoughts on it for that matter, because I want to hear what you guys think about it and what you're using with your PS5, whether it be an old legacy AV receiver that doesn't support Dolby Atmos, or you have a full-blown system in a dedicated room or something. Let me know in the comments. But yeah, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't for more home theater gaming and TV content, because there's a lot more of that to come. Until next time, this has been your friend and neighborhood Villa Man saying be safe and peace.